Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic live episode of Dream Business Radio. I'm your host, Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach. This is episode 609. This is the third in my final 4 Dream Business Radio shows. Next week will be the final one with another amazing entrepreneur. But this week I've got serial entrepreneur, coach, publisher extraordinaire, Mike Capuzzi. Welcome back to Dream Business Radio, my friend. This is like I think the third time since I've started my podcast.
Is it? Hey, Jim, it's good to see you.
So I'm excited for what I know is going to be a great conversation. The first was with Adam Urbanski, mentor of mine. Last week was Melanie Benson, another mentor, and you've been a huge mentor of mine also. So I'm going to, for the folks who may not know Mike, if you're living under a rock, I'm going to read just a little bit of his professional bio because it was like 5 pages long what he sent me. But anyway, with over 3 decades of hands-on experience, Mike Capuzzi is recognized authority in high-impact marketing and short, helpful book publishing. As a seasoned marketing strategist, publisher, and Amazon #1 best-selling author, Mike has dedicated his career to helping business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporate leaders differentiate themselves and amplify their authority through the power of direct response marketing and short, helpful books. Notice that's the second time I said that's part of his brand. And short, helpful books are known as shooks. Anyway, Mike's innovative approach to marketing goes beyond conventional methods. He's the creative mind behind Copy Doodles, which is like, I mean, talk about setting the world on fire in terms of copywriting, both online and offline. Anyway, it's a wildly successful collection of hand-drawn direct response graphics. I'm going to ask him about that. So that was pretty cool. I remember that launch. Mike is also the host of the Author Factor podcast. He loves doing podcasts, and this show is ranked in the top 3% of all podcasts globally by listener notes. So anyway, that's the professional stuff. On a personal level, Mike and I go way back, I think, to either 2007, maybe 2006 time frame.
2006.
And I was exhibiting in my booth for my first company. I'm like local businessman, newsletter guy. I was at a Chester County Chamber of Commerce thing, had my homemade booth display, and Mike walked up, and me being bored, I said, oh, this guy looks like a conversationalist. So we had a good time, and we really chatted for a long time. Mike said, let's get together for lunch. And at that lunch meeting, I think that was in Eagleview. I can't remember the name of the place, but
your life changed.
Yeah, my life changed forever. Mike gave me a copy of No BS Direct Response Marketing, Dan Kennedy's first book. And I was so drawn in, and I literally ordered all the other No BS books. And Mike also introduced me to the whole Planet Dan world. I'm going to talk a little bit about more as we get going. But anyway, so Mike and I have been friends for a long time, and we used to go kayaking together when I had a house near Marsh Creek. That's actually a picture of Mike, like 6 a.m. That's you, Mike. I think I used to put that as
like the Loch Ness Monster.
As my own meme, thinking that was me. And then a couple boats later, you guys all remember the floating home, Mike and Becky. I mean, we've been friends for a long time, and they came down to see us. But anyway, so much I want to cover on this. And I titled this episode, Always Play a Bigger Game, because when I think of Mike, and honestly, I always prepare for these interviews, but these last, now this being the third, I've spent the most amount of time because not only do I want to share their brilliance with you, but also I feel like as I end my career in about 6 months from now, I just want to kind of pay homage and give thanks to the people who've helped me in a very big way. So always play a bigger game, Mike. When I think of you, and I think part of this probably comes down to your engineer background, but you're also very creative. You and I, like, sometimes we'd get on the phone and go, tell me if this is a bad idea or not. Like, we're always thinking. So when did, I mean, give everybody the 2-minute version. You were an engineer, right? And then you went out on your own, and you've been self-employed for a very long time.
Yeah, 1998,
wow.
Which is a long time. Ironically, Jim, just before we share that, I was just thinking, my wife Becky, who you obviously know, reminded me it was 2 years ago today that we last came down to your boat. We had
today?
Wow. Yeah, 2
years
ago today. And she was like, I thought it was a year ago. She told me 2 years ago we came down, had some wine and food, if you recall. And then
we sold it 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I'm waxing poetic. I just found out because I looked on Facebook earlier. Today is the 40th anniversary of my friggin' high school graduation. So
Wow.
I'm feeling old. But I remember going to your 50th birthday party, which that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I got a picture of that too. So hang.
Yeah.
I
So,
know. Wow.
yeah. So, yeah. I graduated from Penn State with an engineering degree. Fortunately, I worked in Exton, a little engineering company in Exton. You know that, of course, and Pennsylvania. And then I moved from a engineering company doing engineering work to an engineering software company, which was very small, right near your old house.
Mhm.
And that company, I was employee number 57. I just saw something recently. They were in the news. They're now a $16 billion a year company.
Wow.
A little family-run software company that's just blown up. So, but even then, Jim, I always knew I had that entrepreneurial streak. So at the height of my career, and I was doing pretty good there, I met Becky, my wife, there. She was a co-op student, if you remember that. And, just said, hey, I want to do this. I want to go into business for myself. And yeah, left it in 1998 at the height of the dot-com bubble.
Wow. Which actually leads me to another point. I don't mean this to be 30 minutes of how great you are, but you always showed to me that you had a lot of courage to act. And in my earlier days, I've shared a lot of my own demons, which I've made public in my books. I had a lot of fears, but you seem to be always taking action despite your fears. So that's just a compliment. But when did you first become aware of who Dan Kennedy was?
Yeah, so again, you and we have to talk about local because we lived in the same area for so long. I used to go to the Barnes and Noble in Exton.
Okay.
If you recall that, I think it's still there actually.
Yep.
I used to go there all the time, and this is, I think, about 2004, 2005, and at the time, I was doing what I now call BDM, sort of big dumb marketing, right?
Yeah.
Typical corporate style, really worried about logos and stuff like that, which, they have their importance. But anyway, I just remember seeing one of the little No BS books, and it was one of the small ones. And in the back of it was an offer to join his program, his membership program. Actually, at the time, Bill Glazer was managing it. So Bill Glazer became a friend. And it was a 3-month trial, right? Classic membership opportunity.
Right.
And I joined it. And my life it was such a critical junction. I was doing good as a consultant, but I just it wasn't great. Like I wasn't enjoying it really. And once I learned about Dan and Bill and all these really smart entrepreneurs, and as you know, and I'll share this very quickly, once I became a GKIC member at the time, this is now 2006, they started advertising, hey, we're going to start these local chapters. Call us and find out where your local chapter is. I'm thinking, how cool is that? I'm loving what I'm reading. I'm loving this whole marketing, direct response marketing. So I called GKIC, hey, I'm up and outside Philly, yada, yada, yada. At the time, I didn't realize it, but I was speaking to Howard Zeiden, who we're both friends with. And Howard's like, hey, there's nobody in Philly right now. Do you want to be the guy? And that was another.
Oh, so that happened on the phone. I thought you went to a super conference and
that's how I wasn't even, I was still in the trial membership.
Oh my gosh.
I was the guy that was still in the trial membership when I signed up to become the Philly chapter director. No, my first meeting or first event was late summer of 2006. I went to Renegade Millionaire, drove out to Cleveland by myself, didn't know anybody. And, but yeah, no, I joined it. I called.
That's even better than I was about to tee that up. But that's even better. Again, playing a big game. So you buy the book, you're hooked on Dan, and then you invest. I'm not going to say how much.
Oh yeah.
You invest big bucks and take over this territory for this newfound concept. I mean, that is courage out the wazoo.
Yeah, maybe in hindsight, but I just felt part of it was I was so, like, most of us and there's a lot of people probably watching or listening to this who can understand what we're talking about, right? And I know you were in this, like, you get bit by that bug.
Yes.
And it's like you become voracious, right? You try to absorb as much as you can. So I was amped up about it, and I remember talking to my wife Becky about it. Like, hey, this is a big check we're writing to this. I don't know anybody. Not only was it a big check, it was a big monthly number afterwards. Again, classic Kennedy. And but it paid off, Jim, as you well know. I mean, look, 18 years later, you and I are still friends. There's a lot of people that I'm still very connected with. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of people that have come and gone and passed on, which is crazy too.
Yeah. So, so another memory I want to share and say thank you officially, which I'm sure I've said thank you in person. But so whatever the very next event was, and you told me, said, "Hey, I'm going to be starting this meeting." I was there for the very first one, and I think it was next to the steakhouse. It was the Sheraton, maybe, I can't remember. But and then you said, "I've got because I'm an IBA, I got 2 tickets, and Becky can't go. Do you want to go with me?" And this was a time I was very tight for money. And so you took me to that super conference. Again, my eyes were like saucers with all these people. And it's the first time that I remember experiencing an event like that. I thought there's going to be speakers, but every single speaker was there for 70 minutes. They, talked about how great they were for 10 minutes, shared about this much information, and then pitched. And I thought it seemed a little smarmy, but then they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of them, or tens of thousands, whatever. But I'm like, they're not even that good. I'm like, they're not even that good, and they're cleaning up like that. I should really do that. But that was a big fear that I had. But
wow.
Yeah, do you remember that? And then I think it was the next year there was an info summit, and I might be getting the years mixed up. But then we go to the info summit, and you spoke. I mean, I think this was a breakout room, but I used to go to all of them, like run it, and you had the biggest crowd. That's Mike up there speaking. And, again, you cleaned up with copy doodles. Yeah. I'm like, I've got to learn how to be a speaker, and I've got to learn how to sell from the stage, which I did. I then, with your help, and, here's another memory is we were at the, it was the old coal-fired pizza place down in Exton when I was going to run my very first event. And you helped me come up with a strategy on how to design it and run it and just mastermind the whole
remember
thing.
That I remember.
Oh my God. It's been amazing. And then later when I did kick my fear and learn how to be a speaker, you invited me and I spoke at your event. Yeah. But you also mentioned earlier, Mike, let me see, I got one more picture to show. I call this when Mike speaks, people listen, kind of like the old commercial. So that's my 50th birthday party. I don't know if you can see my cursor. And the yellow shirt is Jay McGrath, and that's our late friend Eric Paul. And there's Mike, probably talking about marketing. But look at how attentive they are. I don't know. They're either saying that's brilliant or Mike, this is a party. Turn it off. I don't know which one that was. But
I remember that was a hot day too. I remember it was pretty hot.
Dang, that was so hot. Yeah. All right, so let's get back to some.
By the way, just not only because my engineer brain won't allow me not to say this. Yep. So that picture you put, the copy doodles presentation, that was actually 2009. That was several years later. That was the Super Conference. That was the Super Conference 2009. That was a main stage presentation, I believe. I don't know, it was a breakout. Maybe it was a breakout. But that was a very cool event. But by that point, Jim, you were already a couple of years exhibiting at the Super Conference.
I was. And that, again, your big picture thinking always, it was rubbing off on me because, and I've told this story before, started to do okay. And, but still, I had a lot of a mess with my money mindset, and I had real bad feelings about the debt I had from 18 months of unemployment and the cancer and the first year being revenue free. So I'm trying to chip away at this mountain of debt. And Bill Glazer, God bless him, wanted $5,000 for a 10 by 10 piece of carpet. Then I had to have the display and ship it out there. And you couldn't exactly stay down the road at Motel 6 to save money. You had to stay in the $200 a night place and eat the $40 eggs, So I added all that up, but I did it. I pulled the trigger. I exhibited, I think, at least 4 of those events. Yeah. Literally added, I'd say, a couple hundred No Hassle newsletter members because it was such a prime audience. But it really speaks to, not to break my arm, but it speaks to being able to invest in yourself when you know you're going to be successful, and you have to step up and invest before you're rolling forward. And, it's what you did. It's what I did there. Now, when you launched that Philly chapter, IBA program, Independent Business Advisor, that thing was very popular from the get-go. I remember people were driving out from Bucks County and all over the place.
New York City, they were coming down from?
Yes. Yeah. There was a couple of gals that drove in from upstate New Jersey, I remember. And then the next thing you did, very smartly, was you launched a mastermind group out of that. prior to that, my only experience masterminding was getting together with 5 other entrepreneurs I met at Chamber of Commerce events, commiserating with each other about how bad things are. But that was a real mastermind. Now, had you led masterminds prior to that?
No. I remember those. Yeah, we were at Westchester University in the Graduate Center, and I can remember. Boy, if I'd known that, I would have given you some pictures. We got I still have all those pictures, but
yeah.
No, it's funny, Jim, and this is instrumental in a lot of ways too. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I shared when I did the first training for the IBA program, which was April 2006, I went down to DC. That's where I first met Bill, first met Dan, first met Howard Zeiden. I didn't know them. And there are all these other people in the room, which you would recognize every name, right? A lot of them were big time info marketers, coaches, consultants, et cetera, who bought into this program also. And then there was me. Nobody knew me. And I found out a year or two later, after I became, very successful with the program, that they were all sort of like, who the heck's this guy? He's not going to be here in a couple months. But I've always been skilled. And I've said this to you many times, like, I am not the best speaker. I am not, I just am who I am, and I'm authentic. I care about people. And I think that really came through. So that's why I used to pride myself on, I'd have 50, 60, 70 people come to those monthly meetings, knowing everybody's name and greeting them. Hey, Jim, good to see you. Now, we were friends, but, meeting people. And if it was the first time, just remembering their name. And I think that was really what set me apart. Plus, I had several years of marketing and consulting experience. So I wasn't like, I knew what I was talking about. So,
and the other thing I picked up from you is, and we would occasionally drive to those meetings together, or we'd drive to Mastermind or something. And I might have asked you, that was a really good answer you gave to one of the Mastermind members who presents his problem or challenge. And you said, I really had no idea what I was going to tell him, but I thought, what would I do in that situation? And I thought it came across as very genuine, which it did. But it was like, people who worry about leading a group like that, they're worried, do I have the smarts or intelligence? You gotta care, right? And you got your own personal experience, and just lead, right? You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, by 100 points, right? So it really is about caring and sharing and helping other people, I guess.
It is.
I learned.
I think you have to layer. If you're going to lead people, and especially if you're going to lead people and ask for money in return, then you can't be some Johnny come lately who's never written a sales letter, and then you're teaching copywriting, for example. Yeah. So I think you definitely have to have the chops, but you're right though, just making it happen. And that's why I've watched you over the years, and I've always been amazed. Once you hit your sweet spot, and then I can remember, like you said, talking about that first event, and then all of a sudden I see you doing what? Like you were doing 2 a year all around the country. Like, holy moly.
I did. And then I did it for 2 years. Then I really started burning out. So I cut back to 1 year. We did 8 in total. And first of all, doing those events and learning how to sell from the stage has made this life possible, where I can retire in 6 months. I mean, that is a skill that is just worth its weight in gold. So for, I still see, and I gosh darn, I saw it on a truck the other day. I knew it was a copy doodle. So tell everybody, because they're still around. I assume you still have a business around it, but it really took the world by storm, Mike. So how did you come up with the concept? Well, tell people what it is.
It took the Glazer Kennedy world by storm.
That's true.
Which was big. I wish it took to the world by storm. But Dan encouraged me. I did a consulting day with him at one point, and he encouraged me to think even bigger. And in my head, I my own head trash. I was like, this is not that kind of thing. But I mean.
Was that your engineering background? How to make something with a transparent background? I guess it's a ping now, pretty common, but
PNG. Yeah, it was something I was using for my own clients. Right, my wife Becky has got this really good handwriting, and I would ask her to do these little doodles and little things that I could layer on to. Most of the time, it was like direct mail kind of stuff, envelopes and stuff like that. And I realized, because I was in a mastermind group at the time, I realized that I had something here. And I can remember Ben Glass, who's a friend of ours, a mutual friend. I showed it to him. I showed it to Bill Glazer. And then I don't know if you remember, and if you want, I can share it, but I don't know if you remember my Dan Kennedy lunch story, but that's when it went from like this to this.
No, if you want to share it, please do.
And maybe you were at the event. It was the sales choreography event where Sydney Barrows was speaking.
I remember that. Remember, I gave her a ride home from your event or to the train, I think.
Oh, well, that was at the chapter meeting, but no, this was down in DC, I believe. Anyway, this is a great story, and I love sharing it because there's so many hidden lessons. Long story short, GKIC ran a contest for the IBAs, the Independent Business Advisors. There was about 100 of them at the time. I was Philadelphia. And if you had hit a certain metric for new members, the prize was a private lunch with Dan Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns out it was at an event, and Dan was breaking out, an hour out of his time and having lunch. Well, 3 of us won it. 2 people didn't show up. The other 2 didn't show up. So it was just Dan and I in the basement, like the lower level hotel. I don't know where the hotel was. I had met Dan a couple times. As a matter of fact, I brought him a gift. You were on there. It was a photo of the chapter, and everyone signed it. So you must have probably signed it there. And I gave him as a gift, and we had lunch, and we talked. But at the time, Jim, I had a CD-ROM because Copy Doodles was on a CD. I can remember distinctly at the end of our lunch, I'm like, hey, Dan, I've got this thing I came up with, and I pushed the CD across the table and a book of the doodles. And I'm like, what do you think of this? And Jim, he just lit up. He's like, this is so cool. This is so hard. I remember we would have to do typesetting to do this, yada, yada, yada. And the rest is history.
That was it.
Yeah.
That's the pat on the back you needed. That's when you really got into high gear.
I have a dorky picture of me. I have it. Oh my God, I'm like, I look like that. It's Dan and I in the hotel, and I got a quick picture. I knew it was smart like that. And by the way, and I just sit there like I look like a 12-year-old starstruck kid, which I wasn't, but I looked that way. And I had to pay homage, much like you're doing today with me, and I appreciate that. Bill Glazer, right? Mm-hmm. Bill Glazer was so hugely important to me. His family, Mara, Karen, and Bill's not doing great these days, but it's just, people on the outside, I think, thought it was like, oh, look at all these crazy people, and they're all Kool-Aid drinkers and whatever, they're all, fanboys, fangirls. But beyond that, I've had the good opportunity to have private meals with Dan Kennedy, multiple ones. I was at his house. I've been with Bill Glazer many times. These were good people. Like, once you were one-on-one like this, so I never mind hitching my trailer to them.
Yeah. You've created a lot of different businesses over the years. Your short business book publishing, the Shook book, that's got to be, I'm trying to think, because where was I? That's at least 5 or 6 years ago, maybe?
Formally, it was 2018. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it since 2007, but formally, we started a publishing imprint in 2018.
And I'm not aware of anybody else doing it before you. You kind of introduced the concept of the short book, which people can read in one sitting. And I don't know if anybody did it before you.
They did. Yeah, I mean, they did. I put my spin on it, which is important. I mean, again, not to keep yapping about Kennedy, but I mean, he was doing these little micro books 30, 40 years ago. And I'm sure he didn't invent it either. Now, we do have a very specific formula. So I will say what we're doing is unique in that respect. It's very specific from the front cover to the back cover. But, the idea of a short book, yeah, that wasn't me.
And then your favorite topic, podcasting, which I know you struggled with for years, but you did launch the Author Factor podcast, which is, are you like a couple hundred shows now, or where are you?
Tomorrow's 233, so I'm about a third of where you were.
That's okay. I'm stopping so you can catch up. So, I mean, has it been good for you? Is it a big pain in the ass, or like what's
yes
the deal?
And yes.
Okay.
But do you remember? So I had been again, it was another GKC Philly member who encouraged me. Bill Parliament for years was encouraging me to do a podcast. I'm like, no. Then I was down on your boat. I came down to visit you for a day. We had one of our little brainstorm days, and you finally kicked my ass and said, the key that the light that you had shown.
I know exactly what it was.
Right. You said, listen, Mike, don't worry about, because I was stressing like I typically do.
You're like, what if nobody listens to it, Jim? What if I get no downloads? And I said, pardon my French, who gives a shit? You're going to make a great connection with the guest.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And that has borne fruit for you.
Yes, it has. And I'm actually, once you and I are getting together soon, so I'll talk to you about what my future plans are, but it's been good. It's been very good. I've met, as you can attest to, like just amazing people. I learned stuff. But yeah, I'm thinking about like sort of what's next when it comes to podcasting.
So 2 more questions, or one more question, kind of an observation / question. So you've been in a lot of different businesses, and you know that a lot of people that have followed me and listened to my podcast and they're on the newer variety. They're not the multi-billion-dollar companies by a long shot, but there's always, and I know this from coaching now for 14 years, there's always a new idea, a new strategy, a new JV, whatever. But in addition to all the things you've done on your own, I know you've done some JVs with people. Not going to say it because a lot of those are private, but how do you determine what's a good opportunity? Like, what should you like? Because you can't just do something half-assed. If you're going to do it, you got to like put some juice behind it, energy and or money or both. How do you decide that, Mike?
Are you talking about like a joint venture or just something in just any sort of project?
I'm like, what's your decision-making process? Because everybody has failures or challenges or things that don't go well, and we've all had some, but you've had way more successes than I believe things that didn't go well. And how do you know what's worth pushing the pedal to the metal?
Yeah, that's probably because I'm pretty conservative and probably should have taken more chances and bigger chances. But yeah, it's been good. I think it's Malcolm Gladwell. I think it's his book, The Tipping Point. He talks about I think it's his book, The Tipping Point. Anyway, in it, or whatever book I'm thinking of, the author really stressed your gut feel, the importance of never ignoring your gut. It's something I try to teach my daughters. Like, that is so important. So whether it's, you're a spiritual person and you believe it's God, whatever it is, that intuition that we all have, I think that's critical. That's got to be, so no matter what, Jim, and again, I know you know this because you've experienced it, maybe you meet somebody, they present an opportunity to you. And matter of fact, I just had one recently. There was nothing obvious. I just didn't want to do it. Right. I was like,
right.
So I think that gut feel is important, and
and it's usually the first gut. Like what I say is your heart wants it to be true. So, but look how good, but your gut says this is bad news, right?
That can happen for sure. Yeah. And then, you just got to do your due diligence. If it's a personal relation, or if it's a relationship that you're establishing, do your due diligence on the individual. If it's the opportunity, there's no magic formula, but I would definitely say the key is that gut feel.
So I'm going to end. It's been a great interview. I suspect people are listening to it, want us to keep going, but I want to end by revealing something about me. But in the end, I'm going to reveal something about Mike, and he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I don't think it's horrible. But
you don't think it's horrible?
No, I don't think it's horrible, but I'm always thinking, how can I help those people who are struggling right now? It's kind of what I don't know. It's why I've been doing this for so long, but by most measures, I would think most people would think that Mike and I have achieved a respectable level of success as entrepreneurs. Mike and I have had so many private, personal conversations about, are we working hard enough? I mean, when I moved on the boat and I went down to 3 days a week, my financial planner said, what if you worked 4 days a week for 1 more year? You'll get to your magic number a lot sooner. And I didn't want to do that. I like my life. And, you've shared with me, I do very well, but should I be working harder? We both struggle a little bit like that. And I think we're both type A drivers. We're both massive action guys, but we also both have a healthy appreciation for life and living life every day. And this may sound like a big jumbled mess by the time I get it out, but what I told the financial planner is that no, I work 3 days a week. I make enough money to fund our lifestyle and to keep putting away for the retirement that's now 6 months away. And I want to live life now. It's not some magic setting. So I think there's a lot of people that get into the pursuit of more, whatever that is. Oh, I want to be a best-selling author. I want to hit 7 figures. I want to hit 8 figures. Whatever it is, my advice, and Mike, I just want you to chime in on this. My advice is figure out what you want your dream lifestyle to look like and create your business that will support that. And don't let anybody else's dreams or what they think is successful be the thing that drives you. So I kind of revealed in some ways you and I are both lazy, even though we both work hard, but we enjoy life. Anything to contribute to that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember distinct conversations with you about this and wondering, it depends on my mood, maybe the season, but I think here's how I measure a lot of things, Jim. My daughters both know me. My daughters both love me. My wife loves me. I think she's even listening because I think I got a text message from her. I think she gave me a laughing emoji. But those kind of criteria, my daughters still come in and say goodnight to me because they're both living at home now because they just graduated college.
Mm-hmm.
They're both working, thank God. But that to me is pretty important. I'm not saying everything's been perfect by any stretch, but I've never been a very materialistic person. Yes, I have some nice stuff, but I've just never been motivated by that stuff. So those were my critical measurements.
And I didn't have it figured out because when Steph and I moved on the boat, and I used to tell this story when I was still doing my events, and I'm like, there was a Monday, and by that point I wasn't working on Monday, and we were on anchor in our beautiful boat, and we took the little dinghy and we went over to a restaurant and had lunch, and we're motoring back, putt, 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 and I go, God, I feel guilty. Everybody's at work. And I felt guilty, man. And I thought, you know what? I really have to get control of that because I've worked very, very hard to be able to live this lifestyle. And damn it, I'm going to enjoy it, which is my bigger point. Play your own game, right?
Yeah.
Live your own life. Anyway, I knew this would be a fun, Mike. Thanks so much, man. You've been very instrumental in my life for quite a while. And I appreciate everything you've done.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, listen, I appreciate your friendship and your wisdom and insights and all that good stuff. And I know we're going to get together soon as the two couples. So I'll look forward to that.
Yeah. Is it MikeCapuzzi.com? I should not be remiss in saying, where do you want people?
Yeah,
you're still working.
MikeCapuzzi.com will get you everywhere. Sure. Thank you.
MikeCapuzzi.com. All right. Mike's a good friend and just a wealth of knowledge. So connect with him. Buy one of his Shook books. I told him I don't like the name Shook, but evidently it's working, so I don't know everything. Anyway, you can connect with me at GetJimPalmer.com. That is still my website. But until this time next week, the last fantastic interview is going to be with somebody who inspires me greatly. And this person is far younger than me. It's my daughter, Jessica, who's grown an amazingly successful business. Can't wait to showcase her and pick her brain a little bit. But until then, I am Captain Jim Palmer, the Dream Business Coach, and you take good care.